Picture this. You're not tucked into a cosy bed with memory foam and a white noise machine humming softly. No, you're sprawled on a patch of damp, unforgiving earth, the kind that clings to your skin like a jealous lover. Your blanket, a scratchy wool cloak that smells like it's been through 3 wars and a sheep's bad day. Your pillow, a lumpy sack that might have once held grain but now just holds your regrets. The air is sharp, biting at your nose with a mix of frost and the faint, sour tang of unwashed bodies. Somewhere nearby, a horn blares, or maybe it's a man screaming march with the kind of desperation that suggests he's owed a debt. By the word itself. There's no snooze button, no gentle wake-up call, just the cold, hard reality of a medieval morning slapping you awake. You try to move, but your body protests louder than a tavern brawl. You've slept in your armour chain mail that's less noble knight and more rusty torture device. It's fused to you now, pinching your ribs and creaking like an old cart. Your joints ache, your back screams, and your knees sound like someone's grinding a bag of rocks. You glance around, blinking through the pre-dawn haze. A dozen other soldiers are stirring, each with the same haunted look, like they've just remembered they signed up for this. One guy's still out cold, his head resting in a helmet that's now a rainwater bucket. Another is wrestling a slug out of his boot with a dagger, muttering curses that would make a priest blush. You're not sure if you're in a camp or a punishment for sins you don't remember committing. The camp is alive with groans and clanks, a symphony of misery. Someone coughs up what sounds like half a lung. A horse snorts in the distance, probably judging you. The ground beneath you is more mud than earth, sucking at your boots like it's got plans to keep them. You try to stretch, but the chainmail says absolutely not, and you immediately regret existing. This isn't the glamorous battlefield of songs with banners fluttering and heroes posing. This is the real thing, cold, wet, and smelling like despair and last night's stew. You're not a knight, you're not even a squire, you're just a guy who's already tired and the sun's barely up. Welcome to the good life, soldier. If this is one of the better mornings, you're not sure you want to see the bad ones. So before you trudge into the chaos, take a second to like this story if it's hitting the mark. Drop a comment, where are you listening from and what time's it there. It's wild to think we're all sharing this gritty tale across the globe. Now let's keep moving. The enemy's not waiting, and neither's that crust of bread you're calling breakfast. You drag yourself upright, every muscle screaming like it's auditioning for a tragedy. Breakfast is calling, but it's not exactly a warm stack of pancakes with syrup. You're handed a crust of bread so hard it could double as a shield, probably baked last Lent and forgotten in some monk's cellar. You chew it slowly, not because you're savouring the flavour, but because your jaw's still sore from yesterday's feast, which was less feast and more mystery meat roulette. Was it pork badger? Something that growled before it hit the pot? You don't ask, because knowing might ruin the vibe. You wash it down with a swig of warm ale, murky and bitter, because medieval water is a gamble you're not brave enough to take. One wrong sip and you're praying to saints you've never heard of. Hygiene's a distant dream. You haven't seen a mirror in weeks, and honestly, that's a mercy. Your face feels like it's hosting a mud convention, so you splash some swamp water on it, hoping it's cleaner than you are. It's not. The water's got a smell that suggests it's been moonlighting as a latrine. You strap on your gear, Greaves vambraces a helmet that's more dent than dignity. It all smells like fear and old sweat, a perfume you're calling eau de misery. Around you the camp's a circus of chaos. One soldier's trying to tie his boot with a dagger because the lace is snapped. Another's arguing with a horse that's clearly done with this war. The sergeant's barking orders from atop a horse he definitely didn't walk a mile to get his voice like a whip cracking through the fog. You're hungry, damp, and already dreaming of a life where you're not wearing 30 pounds of metal that hates you. The other soldiers aren't faring much better. There's a guy with trench foot so bad his boots squelch when he walks. Another's muttering about desertion, but the threat of a chopped off something keeps him in line. You catch a whiff of the food cart, stale bread, questionable stew, and a hint of regret. This is your morning prep, your grand start to the day. No barbers, no baths, just you, your crusty bread, and a growing suspicion that the universe has a personal grudge. If this is what ready for battle looks like, you're in for a long day. So soldier chin up metaphorically, because your helmet's too heavy for that. The march is coming, and it's not waiting for you to feel human again. Hey, if this tale's got you hooked, smash that like button, and let me know in the comments what you're picturing right now. Where are you tuning in from? Let's keep this journey rolling. You're moving now, not because you're eager for glory, but because standing still means a sergeant's boot in your back, or worse, a whisper of deserter that ends with your head on a pike. The command to march cracks through the air like a whip, and you trudge forward one squelching step at a time. The ground isn't earth. It's a swamp of despair mud so thick it grabs your boots like a clingy bog spirit. Each step feels like the ground's trying to steal your soul, or at least your left foot. Your chainmail clanks with every move, pinching your skin in places you didn't know could hurt. It's less armour, and more a personal vendetta slow roasting you in your own sweat. Your shoulders scream, your thighs burn, and your knees creak like a cartwheel about to snap. Around you, the army's a miserable parade. Men grumble, armour rattles, and someone's already limping after stepping barefoot on a rock sharper than a tax collector's glare. The air's thick with the stench of livestock, cheap onions, and fear that's got its own flavour like sour ale left out too long. Someone ahead lets out a fart so powerful it could wake a coma patient. You try breathing through your mouth, but that just makes you taste it. The sergeant's yelling again, his voice a relentless drone like a church bell with a grudge. Form up, move out, he barks, perched on a horse that's cleaner than any of you. You're pretty sure he's never felt the joy of mud sucking at his soles. You adjust a strap full behind and catch a glare from the guy behind you. His face says he'd eat you, if it meant getting to the hill faster. Morale's a myth. Some men sing war songs, their voices cracking like dry twigs. Others mutter prayers, clutching rosaries, or whatever lucky charm they've got left. One guy just screams into the wind and nobody stops him. It's the most honest thing you've heard all day. You pass a dead hedgehog, a broken cart, and something that might have been a toe. No one stops. Stopping's for people who like being screamed at. You're exhausted, damp, and wondering if you should have taken up basket weaving instead. The enemy's still miles off, but you're already fighting a war against your own body in this cursed mud. If this is the warm-up, you're not sure you're ready for the main event. Keep trudging, soldier. Drop a comment if you're feeling this slog. Where are you listening from? Let's see how far this misery travels. You've made it barely. The march ends at what they're calling a battle camp, but it's less a strategic stronghold and more a muddy convention of misery. You collapse onto a patch of ground that's only slightly less cursed than the rest, claiming it as your bed by sheer force of exhaustion. Your neighbour does the same, and just like that you've started a trench community. Congratulations, you're a homeowner. The air hits you like a slap, a rancid blend of wet wool, unwashed bodies and boots that have been fermenting since last spring. There's a food cart nearby, but the smell wafting from it suggests it's serving regret with a side of rot. Flies buzz around like they've got a personal invitation, some so bold you're tempted to name them. You spot one called Harold landing on your arm and decide he's the least of your problems. The camp's a chaotic mess. Tents are for nobles. You get mud and a prayer. The latrine's just a shallow hole dug with haste and a whole lot of regret. It smells like the end of the world, and privacy's a fairy tale. Nobody's making eye contact down there. You're handed a bowl of stew grey as a storm cloud and about as appetising. You ask the cook what's in it. He stares at you for 5 long seconds before walking away like you've offended his ancestors. You eat anyway because hunger's louder than pride, and you're hoping whatever's in there didn't have a name 2 hours ago. Around you men sharpen weapons, play dice, or pray loud enough to make sure God's taking notes. The noise is relentless, hacking coughs, distant weeping and some guy butchering a song about bread. A knight barks an order smelling like lavender, and privilege you hate him on principle. Night falls, and you curl up in your damp cloak next to a guy who snores like he's wrestling a bear in his sleep. You try to rest, but your brain's too busy listing all the ways you might not make it to sunrise. A goat wanders by, eyeing your ribs like they're next on the menu. Somewhere in the distance a voice yells, "Form up at sunrise," and you groan. Another glorious morning awaits and you're already dreading it. If this camp's the calm before the storm, you're not sure you'll survive the thunder. Hey, if this tale's got you hooked, hit that like button and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe where you are? Let's keep this grim journey rolling. Dawn breaks cold and cruel like a blade pressed against your throat. You crawl out of your lice-ridden cloak, every bone creaking like an old barn door. The camp's a mess of groans and shuffles, men pretending they're ready for what's coming. You line up not out of enthusiasm, but because standing in rows feels like a flimsy shield against the chaos in your gut. Then he appears, the noble commander, astride a horse so pristine it might have been polished by angels. His armour gleams, untouched by mud or misery, and he's got that smug look of someone who's never been punched in the face. You squint at him, half expecting a halo, and immediately decide he's the worst. He clears his throat and the air tenses like a bowstring. Men he booms, pausing for effect as someone nearby hacks up what sounds like a small animal. Today we fight for glory. The word lands like a wet rag. Glory's a fine concept when you're not starving and your boots aren't squelching with trench foot. For our king, our lands, our honour, he continues, his voice soaring over the crowd's murmurs, mostly from stomach cramps, not patriotism. You glance at the guy next to you. He's shaking so hard his helmet's on backward and his sword looks like it was forged by a drunk blacksmith. Honour. You're just hoping to keep your insides on the inside. The enemy fears us, he declares, and you bite back a snort. They're probably listening to their own shiny commander spinning the same tale in a different accent. If you die today, he adds with the cheer of a man discussing picnic plans, you die as heroes. You fight the urge to raise your hand and ask if you can die later, maybe as a baker with a warm hearth and no arrows in your back. He wraps it up with a bit about God being on your side, which is comforting, until you remember God's been smiting everyone equally lately. With a dramatic sword thrust to the sky, he shouts, "Forward! Nobody moves!" A guy sneezes. Another blinks like he's forgotten why he's here. The shouting picks up until someone shuffles forward and you follow not for glory but because standing still might get you volunteered for something worse. This speech was supposed to light a fire in your soul, but all it's done is remind you how cold your feet are. If this is inspiration, you're in trouble. Drop a like if you're feeling this grim pep talk and comment where you're tuning in from What's the Time There. Let's march on with this tale of questionable heroics. Form ranks, the sergeant bellows, his voice like a hammer on an anvil, and you shuffle into what's supposed to be a line but feels more like a drunken herd. The battlefield stretches ahead, a muddy mess of churned earth and bad decisions, and you're trying to look like you belong here. Your comrades are a sorry sight. Half are still wrestling with their helmets. One guy's gripping a pitchfork like he wandered in from a farm, and another's shield is upside down, doubling as a back scratcher. You're not an army. You're a clump of tired men vaguely pointing the same way, hoping that's enough to fool the enemy. This sergeant, who you're pretty sure was herding pigs a few years back, screams numbers that mean nothing to anyone. Frontline shield wall, he roars and you nod like you get it, even though the guy in front of you's holding his shield like it's a dinner tray. Second line pikes forward. You clutch your spear, praying you don't accidentally stab yourself. To your left, a lanky soldier's wielding a pole twice his height, poking people without meaning to. To your right, a grizzled man's humming what might be a battle hymn or just a tavern tune with new words. Behind you, someone's breathing like they're practicing for a dramatic death scene, loud, raspy, and way too committed. The cavalry's off to the side, horses pawing the ground like they're ready for a parade. The knights sit tall, their plate armour gleaming like they've got a personal sun following them. You meanwhile are in borrowed boots that smell like their last owner didn't make it, and chain mail that's more rust than protection. The order comes to tighten the line, which sounds simple, until you realise everyone's stepping on everyone else's feet. Mud sucks at your soles, threatening to claim you whole. Your shield's backward now, but fixing it feels like admitting defeat to the universe. A drum starts thudding, slow and ominous, like it's counting down to your doom. Men whisper prayers, one sobs quietly. You grip your weapon, take a shaky breath, and try not to faint. This is it, your line's as ready as a crooked row of terrified peasants can be. If this chaos is resonating, hit that like button and let me know where you're listening from. What's the vibe there? The arrows are coming next, so let's keep this grim march going. You're standing in your wobbly line, gripping your shield, your best friend Gerald, as you've named it, in a desperate bid to stay sane when the sky betrays you. It starts with a sound, a soft whoosh in the distance, like a flock of birds taking flight. But birds don't hum with the promise of death. The shout comes sharp and sudden. Shields up. You scramble to obey, hoisting Gerald like he's your only hope, which, let's be honest, he is. The guy next to you fumbles, still trying to figure out which end of his shield is the top, and you brace for what's coming. The sky darkens not with clouds, but with a swarm of arrows, hundreds of them streaking down like the wrath of a god who's had a very bad day. They hit with a fury that shakes your bones. Thud, crack, ping arrows slam into shields, pierce armour, and bury themselves in the mud with a hiss. A man 2 rows ahead drops an arrow jutting from his shoulder like a quill in an inkwell gone wrong. Someone screams, another curses in what might be Latin or just a sneeze, it's hard to tell through the panic. You shrink behind Gerald, who takes a hit with a metallic clang that makes your teeth rattle. You whisper sweet nothings to him, promising never to mock his lopsided shape if he keeps you alive. An arrow skitters off the ground near your foot, and you decide right then that Gerald's the love of your life. The second volley comes before you can catch your breath. Veterans crouch low, muttering prayers or curses. New recruits wail openly, one guy just flops down and plays dead a strategy you're low-key jealous of. To your left are soldiers yelling at the archers like they can hear him. To your right, another's cursing his neighbour for not ducking fast enough. Behind you, a man's shouting he's hit, but you suspect he's just angling for a ticket out of this mess. The air's thick with the whistle of arrows and the stench of fear, yours included. Finally, the sky clears and you're still breathing. Gerald's earned a medal, or at least a polish. But the real terror's just warming up. Close combat's next, and it's not going to be pretty. If this heart-pounding chaos is hitting home, drop a like and comment where you're tuning in from. What time is it there? Let's brace for the next storm together. The arrows stop, but there's no time to celebrate. The world lurches forward and suddenly you're moving, not charging heroically, but stumbling with the reluctant momentum of men who know they'll be trampled if they freeze. Someone ahead yells something meant to be inspiring, trips over a rut and gets stepped on. You don't stop to help, not because you're heartless, but because pausing might make you the next floor mat. Then it hits literally. You slam into the enemy line like a sack of turnips meeting a sack of knives. This isn't the elegant swordplay of Bard's Tales. It's a meat grinder, a sweaty screaming mess where personal space is a distant memory. You swing your weapon, a sword, maybe an axe, or just a sharpened stick you grabbed in panic. There's no finesse, no strategy, just flailing like your life depends on it, because it does. Metal crashes against metal wood splinters, and men grunt like they're hauling barrels uphill. The enemy's so close you can smell their breakfast onion sweat and terror, not so different from your side. Your helmet fogs up, your lungs burn, and someone's shoulder rams your ribs, sending you staggering. You stab downward, praying it's not your own foot, and feel something give. Blood's on your gauntlet now, whose doesn't matter. A man swings at your head. You duck on instinct and he catches someone else. You share a glance, half apology, half better him than me, and keep swinging. The noise is deafening, screams, clangs, and one guy chanting "Huzzah" like it's a war cry, though you're pretty sure he's just lost it. You're drowning in sensory overload, mud squelching underfoot, the wet crunch of something you don't want to identify, the sting of sweat in your eyes. You're training. Swing hard, don't die. That's it. You hit, you miss, you stumble, you survive. Men fall around you, some screaming, some silent, their eyes wide with shock or empty already. This isn't a duel. It's a bar brawl at the world's worst tavern with 500 drunk-armed lunatics and no one to call for peace. You're alive for now, but the fight's just getting started. If this chaos is gripping you, smash that like button and let me know where you're listening from. What's the scene there? Let's wade deeper into this bloody mess. The battle's over, but you're not sure how it ended. No trumpets blared, no villainous. General shouted retreat with a dramatic flourish. One moment it was all screams and steel. The next, the clanging fades replaced by groans and the heavy silence of exhaustion. You blink through the haze of sweat and blood, hopefully not yours, and look around. The field's a grim canvas, bodies sprawled like broken dolls, swords stuck in the mud, and a lone boot perched on a rock like it's waiting for its owner to reclaim it. The air smells of iron earth and something you don't want to name. You're still standing, more by dumb luck than skill, your legs wobbling like a newborn calf's. Someone mutters, "We won," with the enthusiasm of a man who's just found out he gets to live in a plague-ridden tent. Another guy yells victory while clutching an arm that's dangling at an angle God didn't intend. You nod because technically you're upright breathing and mostly unstabbed. That's a win in medieval terms. But victory doesn't feel like the song's promised. There's no fanfare, no feast, just you dragging your bruised, aching body through the carnage. You pass fallen friends and foes, their faces frozen in the same wide-eyed question. Really, this is it. Your ears are still ringing your shield. Blessed Gerald hangs heavy, and your sword feels like it's glued to your hand. You stumble back to camp past men searching corpses for anything useful. One finds a decent dagger and calls it a triumph. A priest mutters prayers over the dead, his voice a low drone against the moans of the wounded. Your commander, still somehow cleaner than a fresh tunic, gives another speech about bravery, but you can't hear it over the yard of your own heartbeat. You're alive, filthy shaken, possibly missing a tooth or two, but alive. That's the prize, not glory, not gold, just another sunrise you didn't expect to see. You sit on a rock exhale and whisper what every survivor thinks. Never again. Spoiler. There's a skirmish next week. If this grim survival's hitting, you drop a like and comment where you're tuning in from. What's the time there? Let's limp on with this tale. The fighting's done, but the work isn't. Cleanup begins, and it's as glamorous as scrubbing a latrine with your bare hands. You're handed the grim task of dragging bodies into piles some covered, most not. You recognise a face, maybe two, but you don't linger. The smell's already turning your stomach into a spiritual experience. Flies swarm in like they've been waiting for this buffet one landing on your arm with the audacity of a noble. You swat it away, but it's back probably named Reginald now. Medics, more like butchers with dull knives, wade in barking, "Bite this stick," as they hack at wounds. You've got a gash on your thigh, the barber surgeon eyes it says we'll see, and pulls out a needle sterilised by a candle's glow. You scream louder than you did when the arrows fell. Others are looting, calling it salvaging to sound noble. You join in, no judgment here. You need boots, and poor Gregor doesn't anymore. Sorry, Gregor. Men dig shallow graves or light pyres, the smoke curling up like a grim prayer. One soldier sits frozen, a javelin still in his arm, muttering, "It's mine now." You offer help. He waves you off. Wounds are bandaged, but some reopen before you can blink infections, a guest that never leaves. By nightfall the field's quieter, the living stumbling back to camp covered in mud blood and a nagging sense that the worst is still coming. You collapse on a patch of earth that's marginally less swampy, the air heavy with sweat-bad stew and the faint char of cooked horse. Around a flickering fire the storytelling begins. Men trade tales, each more absurd than the last. One swears he felled a knight with a broken spoon. Another claims he wrestled a warhorse and won. You lie too, your panicked stumble into a ditch becomes a tactical retreat. It's not about ego. It's survival. If you can laugh, maybe the screams won't haunt you tonight. A woman, a camp follower, hums softly, patching a sleeve like the world's not broken. You stare into the flames, the warmth, the small mercy. You lived barely accidentally, miraculously. Tomorrow's another march, another fight. But for now, there's bread, a mug of sour ale, and men who know your story's half false because theirs is too. That's enough. If this bittersweet moment's got you hit that like button, and let me know where you're listening from, what's the vibe? This wraps the medieval battle tale. Say next to start the Great Wall story. Imagine yourself standing on a windswept plain in ancient China, centuries before the Great Wall was anything more than a desperate idea. It's the Warring States period, a time when the land's carved up into 7 squabbling kingdoms, each one clawing for power like hungry dogs over a scrap of meat. You're no emperor, just a peasant caught in the chaos, your village wedged between rival warlords who'd rather burn it down than share it. The air smells of dust and smoke, with the distant clang of bronze swords echoing like a grim lullaby. Your job. Toiling under the sun, piling earth and stones to build a wall, a flimsy makeshift barrier that's more hope than fortress. These walls aren't the grand stone serpent you picture when you hear Great Wall. They're ramshackle, slapped together with tamped earth timber, and whatever rocks you can drag from the riverbed. You stomp the dirt with blistered feet, your back aching like it's been trampled by an ox. The wall's not part of some grand plan. It's a line in the sand, a defiant stay out to the kingdom next door. But it's not just rival soldiers you fear. To the north beyond the fields and rivers, the Xiongnu lurk nomads who ride like ghosts. Their hooves are thunder that means your livestock's gone, your village torched, and your trade routes cut to ribbons before you can blink. You've seen the aftermath, homes reduced to ash, neighbours missing and a quiet that's louder than any scream. Every kingdom's doing the same, throwing up their own walls like a patchwork quilt of fear. Tens of thousands of you peasants, conscripts, prisoners labour under whips and hunger. No rest, no choice. The walls crumble under rain or raids, but you keep building because stopping means inviting chaos. It's not about unity or empire. It's about survival, about saying this is mine, try and take it. The idea's taking root, though. Maybe the wild north can be tamed not with words, but with walls. If this dusty struggle's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the time there? Let's keep building this tale. Fast forward to 221 BCE, and you're still that peasant, only now the world's shifted under your calloused feet. The Warring States are no more. One man, Qin Shi Huang, has crushed the competition and declared himself the first emperor of a unified China. You're not sure if that's good news or just a new kind of trouble, but one thing's clear, this guy doesn't think small. You're hauling rocks again, only this time it's not for some local warlord's ego wall. Qin's got a vision, a colossal barrier to stitch together the crumbling defences of the old kingdoms into one massive shield against the Xiongnu and anyone else who dares cross him. You're part of an army of labourers now, hundreds of thousands, strong soldiers, peasants and scholars who ticked off the wrong official, all sweating under the same brutal sun. This isn't a repair job, it's an obsession. You pound earth between wooden frames layer after layer, your feet sinking into the dust with every step. Where there's stone, you drag it by hand, your muscles screaming your tools, so basic they might as well be sticks. The terrain's a nightmare, jagged mountains, scorching deserts, but Qin doesn't care. They call this wall the longest cemetery on Earth, and you get why. Friends fall beside you, work to death, their bodies left where they drop. This wall's not just about keeping nomads out. It's about Qin's grip on the world, a stone and dirt testament to his power. He's building roads, standardizing weights, even forcing everyone to write the same script, all to make chaos bow to order. You look at the endless stretch of rammed earth and think it's mad, but it's happening. This isn't the Great Wall of Postcards, not yet, but it's the seed, the foundation of a legend that'll outlast empires. You're exhausted, half-starved, and wondering if you'll see your village again, but you keep pounding dirt because that's what survival looks like under an emperor who dreams of eternity. If this epic grind's gripping you, hit that like button, and tell me where you're listening from. What's the vibe there? Let's keep this wall rising. You're a soldier now stationed on the edge of nowhere where the wind howls like it's got a personal grudge. It's the Han Dynasty, a couple of centuries after Qin Shi Huang's brutal wall-building spree, and you're part of the crew keeping his dream alive. The emperor's gone, his dynasty crumbled faster than a mud wall in a storm, but the Han rulers saw the truth, the north still wild, and those Xiongnu horsemen haven't stopped haunting the frontier. You're not just guarding a wall anymore, you're helping make it something bigger, stronger, a living spine of empire. You patrol along stretches of rammed earth now reinforced with bricks and stones, your boots crunching on gravel paths that weren't here a generation ago. The Han don't mess around. Under Emperor Wu, the walls stretching farther than ever, snaking into deserts and mountains that make your bones ache just looking at them. You help build watchtowers, crude but sturdy, perched like lonely sentinels. At night you light signal fires, their glow racing news of raiders faster than any horse. You're part of a machine now garrison posts, supply depots, even roads that let troops march quick, and messages fly by beacon or runner. It's not just a barrier, it's a lifeline tying the empire to its wild edge. You hear stories of Han armies pushing the Xiongnu back, opening trade routes that bring silk and spices south. The wall's a highway for goods and soldiers, and you're proud even if your hands are raw from hauling stone. Life out here's no ballad though. You're freezing in winter, roasting in summer, and the food's mostly millet and salted meat that's more salt than meat. You've got a family back home, but out here it's you, your comrades, and the occasional merchant swapping gossip for wine. Sometimes you trade with the nomads uneasy, but it happens your grains for their furs, a fragile piece in the wall's shadow. You're building more than stone. You're building a world where Han and frontier blur. If this gritty frontier life's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the time there? Let's keep this wall standing tall. The Han are gone, and with them the wall's glory. It's 2020 CE, and you're a farmer now scratching out a living in a land that's splintered like a dropped clay pot. The empire's fractured into warring kingdoms, each too busy stabbing neighbours to care about the north. You live near an old stretch of the Great Wall, but it's not great anymore, just a crumbling ridge of earth and stone half swallowed by sand and vines. You walk past it daily, its watchtowers leaning like drunks, their signal fires cold for decades. The wall's a ghost, a memory of when emperors dreamed big and had the muscle to back it up. Now it's just you, your plough, and a world that feels like it's unravelling. The threats haven't vanished, though. Nomad Xianbei, Rura and others still raid from the steppes, their horses kicking up dust clouds that mean trouble. But there's no army to man the wall, no garrisons to hold the line. You've seen villages use bits of it, scavenging bricks for homes or temples like picking bones from a forgotten beast. Some local warlords patch up scraps of the old defences, but it's a sad imitation, like a child playing emperor with a stick. You hear tales of poets singing about the frontier, painting it as a place of lonely heroes, but you know better. It's a cold, bitter land where men die for nothing grander than a bad harvest or a bandit's whim. The wall's fading not just from weather, but from memory. It's too vast to maintain without an empire's might, and China's got none to spare. Yet even as it crumbles, the idea lingers, a whisper of what was a dream of a line that could hold back chaos. You wonder if anyone will ever build it again, or if it'll just sink into the earth a scar from a stronger time. For now, you keep farming your hands as calloused as the stones you pass, and hope the next raid spares your fields. If this tale of decay's gripping you, hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the vibe there? Let's see what rises from these ruins next. You're a labourer in the late 1400s. Your hands raw from hauling stone under a sky that's either freezing your bones or roasting them. The Ming dynasty's in charge now, and they're not here to mess around. After centuries of invasions, Mongols thundering through like a storm you couldn't outrun, the Ming emperors are done playing nice. You're working on the Great Wall, but this isn't the crumbling dirt piles of old. This is a beast of stone and brick, a fortress that screams never again. You're part of a crew building under generals like Qi Jiguang, who see the wall not just as a shield, but as a fist projecting Ming power across mountains and deserts. Every block you set feels like a defiance against chaos. The work's brutal. You lay kiln-fired bricks heavy as your regrets and mortared stones that could outlast your grandchildren. The wall snakes over cliffs wide enough in places for a cart to roll high enough to make your neck ache looking up. Watchtowers rise like stubborn sentinels, their beacon fires ready to scream warnings with smoke by day, flames by night. You're not just building a barrier, you're building a world. Garrison towns spring up in the wall's shadow, soldiers, farmers' families carving out lives in this harsh frontier. You hear the clink of coins as merchants trade the shouts of drill masters, the laughter of kids born under stone. This wall's a lifeline, a promise that the Mongols won't ride south without a fight. But it's not all glory. You're back screaming your meals are thin, and corruption's already creeping in. Some guards skim supplies, others trade with the very nomads they're meant to stop. You wonder if this wall, for all its grandeur, can hold back human greed. Still, as you stand on a finished stretch, the wind whistling through the battlements, you feel a flicker of pride. This is the Great Wall, as the world will know it. Massive, unyielding, a scar of ambition across the earth. If this epic rebuild's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 07:21 PM on June 21, 2025? Let's see how long this wall stands. It's the 1600s, and you're a farmer near what used to be the Great Wall's proudest stretch. The Ming are gone undone not by swords, but by betrayal. The Manchus, a new power from the northeast, didn't storm the wall, they walked through an open gate at Shanhai Pass, thanks to a desperate Ming general named Wu Sangui. You heard the story, he thought they'd save Beijing from rebels, but instead they claimed it founding the Qing dynasty. Now the wall's a relic, its purpose fading like a song no one sings anymore. You pass crumbling battlements, their stones scavenged for pig pens and wells. The Empire's pushed north past the old frontier, and this wall, this mighty symbol, feels like a gravestone for a world that's moved on. Centuries pass and the wall sinks further into ruin. Sand swallows sections in the desert, root split stones in the mountains. You're long gone, but by the 19th century, foreign travellers, wide-eyed Europeans with notebooks, start poking around, marvelling at the wall's bones. They spin tales of a single emperor's masterpiece, some even claiming it's visible from the moon. By 1949, the People's Republic of China rises, and the wall's reborn not as a defence but as a symbol. Mao Zedong declares he who hasn't climbed the Great Wall isn't a true man, turning it into a badge of pride. Tourists flock to restored stretches like Badaling, snapping photos by watchtowers, rebuilt to Ming glory while wild sections crumble under weather and neglect. Today, the wall's a paradox, a global icon, yet over 30% gone eaten by time or progress. It's not about keeping enemies out anymore. It's a bridge to the past, a reminder of what humans can build when fear and ambition collide. You standing in 2025 might see it as a tourist, a hiker, or just a dreamer staring at photos. It's stone mortar and myth, whispering of emperors, soldiers and peasants like you who poured their lives into it. If this tale of legacy's stirring, you hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene at 07:21 PM on June 21, 2025? This wraps the Great Wall story. Say next to Gallop into the Pony Express. It's 1860 and you're standing in St. Joseph, Missouri, where the air hums with ambition and the streets smell of dust and horse dung. America's a young country bursting at the seams with gold fever dreams, but it's got a problem that's slower than a hungover mule. You're a merchant waiting on a letter from Sacramento that could make or break your next deal, but the mail's a cruel tease 3 to 4 weeks if the stagecoach doesn't get stuck in a blizzard, robbed by bandits, or tipped over by a rickety bridge with a grudge. The East Coast's buzzing with telegraphs and railroads clicking and clacking in days, but out west, it might as well be the far side of the moon. You're fed up and you're not alone. This is a nation drunk on manifest destiny, the idea that America's meant to stretch coast to coast unstoppable. But a country growing this fast can't wait a month to hear if Lincoln's won or your gold's safe. You've heard of steamships chugging around Cape Horn or through Panama, risky, expensive and slower than a politician's promise. In a world obsessed with speed, waiting's not just inconvenient, it's a sin. You need news now, not when it's stale as last month's bread. Enter the Pony Express, a wild, half-cocked plan to sling mail across nearly 2,000 miles of wilderness in under 10 days. Picture it, young riders, barely old enough to shave, galloping through deserts and mountains, swapping horses like relay racers, dodging arrows and storms. It sounds insane, but so did crossing the continent in wagons, and look how that's going. This isn't just about letters. It's about proving the frontier can be tamed, that America can shrink itself with guts and horsepower. You're sceptical, but the crowd's buzzing ready to cheer the first rider out of town. If this tale of reckless ambitions got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 07:22 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's saddle up for this wild ride. You're still in St. Joseph, Missouri, 1860, but now you're eavesdropping on 3 businessmen who look like they've bet their last dime on a horse race. William H. Russell, Alexander Majors and William B. Waddell aren't cowboys or politicians. They're freight haulers used to schlepping flour and cannons through Indian territory for army posts. But times are tough, contracts are drying up, and the economy's shakier than a saloon table. So they've cooked up a scheme that's either genius or lunacy. The Pony Express, a mail service so fast it'll make stagecoaches look like snails. Their pitch: deliver letters from Missouri to California in 10 days flat, and snag a fat government contract to keep the cash flowing. You're raising an eyebrow, but they're all in. They call it the Central Overland California and Pikes Peak Express Company, a mouthful that the newspapers quickly ditch for Pony Express. You watch them hustle, building over 150 relay stations across deserts, plains and mountains that'd chew up lesser men. They hire 80 riders, skinny kids with more nerve than sense, and buy 400 ponies bred for speed, not cuddles. The route's a beast, 2,000 miles of rock, sand and snow, with passes that swallow wagons and rivers that don't care if you drown. Their first big stunt: deliver Lincoln's inaugural address to California faster than anyone's ever done. It's a PR flex, a middle finger to telegraphs and coaches, and you're half convinced it'll flop spectacularly. April 3rd, 1860, the crowd's electric. You see the first rider bolt out, mail pouch slung over his saddle hooves, kicking up dust like a storm. Cheers erupt. A legend's born. Behind the scenes, though, it's a money pit. Stations need men, horses need feed, and gear breaks like it's got a vendetta. You wonder if these men are visionaries or just gamblers with bad math. Either way, they've lit a spark and the West's watching. If this high-stakes hustle's gripping, you hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene at 7:22 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's see how fast this express can run. You're out on the trail now, 1860. Not as a merchant, but as one of those Pony Express riders. Barely 17, skinny as a fence post, and wired with the kind of reckless courage that only comes from youth or stupidity. You're galloping across the Nevada desert, the wind whipping your face like a leather strap, your horse's hooves pounding a rhythm that's half heartbeat, half prayer. You weigh no more than 125 pounds, company rules, because every ounce counts when you're racing against time, snow and arrows. The job ad was blunt. Skinny, wiry fellows, not over 18, orphans preferred. Charming, right? If you die out here, no one's sending flowers. But you signed up anyway for the thrill, the pay, or maybe just to outrun whatever you left behind. Your saddlebag, the mochila, holds 20 pounds of letters wrapped tight in oilskin to survive rivers and storms. You're dodging dangers that'd make a grown man cry, blizzards that blind you, sandstorms that choke you, and Paiute warriors defending their land with arrows that don't miss. You've got a revolver, a knife, and a whole lot of nerve riding alone through nights so dark the stars feel like they're judging you. Legends like William Buffalo Bill Cody, maybe he rode, maybe he didn't get the fame, but you're thinking of Pony Bob Haslam, who tore through 120 miles with arrows in his shoulder, bleeding but unbowed. You're no hero, just a kid with a job, but every mile you cover feels like spitting in the face of impossible. You swap horses every 10 to 15 miles, flinging the mochila onto a fresh saddle in under 2 minutes, gulping water that tastes like dust. You ride 75 to 100 miles a stretch, then collapse at a home station, your body screaming your dreams haunted by hoofbeats. Bandits, wolves, frozen rivers, they're all part of the deal. Yet the mail gets through almost always because you and your kind don't quit. If this heart-pounding ride's got you hooked, drop a like, and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at a 7:23 p.m. on June 20th, 2025? Let's keep galloping with these wild kids. Now you're a station keeper holed up in a sod hut in the middle of nowhere, 1860, where the horizon's your only neighbour, and it's got nothing nice to say. The Pony Express depends on you, one of 157 relay stations strung across 2,000 miles of wilderness, like beads on a frayed string. Your job's simple but brutal: keep the horses ready, the riders moving, and the mail on time. You're not the one galloping through blizzards, but without you those daredevil kids would be stranded and the express would grind to a halt. Your station's a speck of civilization in a sea of dust and danger, and every day's a gamble against raids weather and the sheer loneliness of the plains. Relay stations like yours are bare bones, 4 walls, a dirt floor, and a corral with horses that would rather be anywhere else. You hear a rider coming, hooves like thunder, and you've got 2 minutes to swap out a sweat-soaked horse for a fresh one. The kid flings the mochila over the saddle, grabs a gulp of water, and bolts off, leaving you in a cloud of grit. Home stations every 75 to 100 miles are where riders crash, eat, sleep, and try to remember what feeling humans like. You've got a fireplace, a cot, and a family maybe all living with a rifle close by. Supplies are scarce. A missed caravan means beans for weeks. You've fended off rattlesnakes, wolves, and raiders who'd burn your station for a sack of grain. You live with one eye open, knowing a late horse or a closed gate could cost hours unacceptable. When the express promises 10 days coast to coast. When it works, its magic letters fly through your hands across mountains and deserts, beating stagecoaches like they're standing still. You're a heartbeat in this wild system, and you take pride in that even if your back's bent and your dreams smell like horse sweat. If this unsung grind's gripping you, hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene at 07:23 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's keep this mail moving. You're back in St. Joseph, Missouri, 1860, but the Pony Express's shine is wearing thin. You're not a rider or a station keeper. Now you're one of the accountants staring at ledgers that look like a death sentence. The Express is fast, sure, blazingly so, but speeds bleeding money faster than a horse with a busted leg. You tally the costs, and it's grim building 157 stations across 2,000 miles of nowhere. Cost Russell Majors and Waddell a fortune, $200,000, $1,000 enough to buy half a town in 1860. You've got 400 ponies bred for speed, but dropping from exhaustion, and 80 riders plus station hands all needing pay food and gear that breaks like it's cursed. Every letter carried costs $5, a half ounce, $170 in today's money. And even when they slashed it to $1, it's still too steep for anyone but bankers and bureaucrats. You'd bet on a big government mail contract to save the day, but the US Post Office isn't biting. They see the Express as a stunt, not a system, especially with the Civil War looming, and Washington too busy to care about your horse dreams. You watch the cash dwindle stations begging for supplies, riders quitting or worse, and horses needing feed you can't afford. The public loves the romance kids in saloons spin tales of riders outrunning arrows, but romance doesn't pay bills. You're running a logistical nightmare on fumes, and the numbers don't lie. The Express is a bold, beautiful disaster. You hear whispers of a new threat, too. Telegraph lines creeping west, promising speed without saddles. If this tale of a sinking dream's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 7:32 p.m. on June 24, 2025? Yeah. Let's see how this gamble plays out. It's October 24th, 1861, and you're standing in Sacramento, California, watching history click into place. The Transcontinental Telegraph's just gone live, a wire stretching from coast to coast like a nerve of pure lightning. You're not cheering, though. You're one of the Pony Express men, and this is your funeral. Messages that took you 10 days of sweat, blood, and hoofbeats now zip across in seconds. No horses, no riders, just dots and dashes humming through copper. You remember the Express's glory days. Kids racing through blizzards, dodging ambushes, carrying Lincoln's words to the west. Now it's over. 2 days later, October 26th, the express shuts down, no fanfare, no final ride, just silence like the quiet after a horse's last gallop. You think of Russell Majors and Waddell, the dreamers who poured everything into this venture, hoping for a government contract that never came. They're bankrupt now, their assets sold off their names, fading like dust on the trail. The Telegraph's cold, efficient, unstoppable, a future you can't outrun, but it's got no soul. No one's writing ballads about Morse code or painting telegraph poles in heroic strokes. You and your riders, though, you're already legends. The Express lasted 18 months a blink, but it proved America could conquer distance with grit and nerve. You carried the nation's hopes, and that's worth more than profit. If this bittersweet end's gripping, you hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene? At 07:32 PM on June 21, 2025. Let's ride on to the myth-making next. It's 1862 and you're sitting in a smoky saloon, the Pony Express, already a memory shut down just months ago. You're no rider, just a listener nursing a warm ale as a grizzled storyteller spins tales of the Express like it was a saga of gods. The truth was wild enough teenage boys tearing across 2,000 miles, dodging arrows and storms to deliver mail in 10 days, but that's not enough for the crowd. They want legends, and the stories are growing taller than a prairie windstorm. One guy swears a rider outran a war party by leaping a canyon. Another claims a kid survived a week on grit and rainwater. You smirk knowing half of it's hogwash, but you lean in anyway. The Express is becoming a myth and you're hooked. By the late 19th century, you're flipping through dime novels, their pages bursting with Pony Express heroics. William Buffalo Bill Cody's the poster boy. Maybe a rider, maybe not. But he's milking it, reenacting daring dashes in his Wild West show for cheering crowds from Chicago to London. Kids clutch toy ponies dreaming of saddles and glory. You see towns along the old route to Joseph Sacramento erect statues and plaques claiming their slice of the tale. Hollywood's not far behind, churning out silent films and westerns where riders are square-jawed heroes. Never mind the real ones were scrawny teens with more guts than muscle. The Express wasn't profitable, barely lasted 18 months, but it's captured America's heart, a symbol of frontier pluck and defiance. You wonder why it endures, maybe because it's the last gasp of adventure before wires and machines took over. If this legend weaving's got you, drop a like and tell me where you're listening from. What's the vibe at 07:32 PM on June 25, 2025? Let's see how this myth grows. You're in 2025 now, looking back on the Pony Express, a fleeting spark that burned out in 1861, but still glows in America's story. You're not in a saloon, but maybe scrolling through a history feed, seeing how those 18 months shaped a nation. The Express was a failure by the numbers bankrupted, its founders never turned a profit, but it was a triumph of spirit. You picture those riders barely old enough to vote, galloping through blizzards and ambushes, carrying letters that stitched a sprawling country together. They proved distance could be conquered, not with machines, but with raw nerve. That's why the Express lingers a blueprint for American daring, from Silicon Valley startups to moonshot dreams. You see its echo everywhere. Towns along the route still celebrate. St. Joseph's got a museum. Sacramento raises statues of riders frozen mid-gallop. Every July, reenactors saddle up hoofbeats honouring the past. You spot Pony Express stamps, read schoolbooks calling riders frontier heroes, and catch old westerns where the Express steals the show. It's more than history. It's a vibe, bold, reckless, all in. The Telegraph killed it, sure, but wires don't inspire like a kid on a Mustang mail pouch flying, racing the impossible. You think of today's instant texts and wonder what 10 days on horseback meant. The Express didn't just deliver mail. It delivered a myth, a reminder that progress once rode on 4 legs, and a prayer. If this tale of legacy's stirring, you hit that like button and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the scene at 07:32 PM on June 21st, 2025? This wraps the Pony Express story. Say next to string the violin's tail. You're a nomad on the Central Asian steppes centuries ago, where the wind sings through endless grasslands and the sky feels close enough to touch. Your life's tied to your horse, your herd, and the simple wooden bow in your hands, not for hunting but for music. You draw horsehair across the strings of a Morin core, its low nasal hum mimicking the cry of your goats or the wail of a lover left behind. It's not a violin, not yet, but it's the spark, a revolutionary idea that friction can sing, that a note can linger like a memory. The air smells of earth and campfires, and your fingers rough from rains coax a melody that feels alive. This crude instrument, the rebab or its kin, is your people's voice passed down through nights under star-draped skies. As trade routes snake west along the Silk Road, you hear tales of it travelling through Persia's bazaars, into Arab courts, and across the sea to Moorish Spain by the 8th century. Each culture tweaks it a new string, a sharper curve, a tuning that fits their songs. In Byzantium you catch whispers of the lyra, another bowed cousin, its sound echoing in stone churches. These aren't polished concert tools, they're raw handmade, as vital as the stories they tell. You're at the root of something vast, a family tree of sound that'll branch across continents. If this ancient hum's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 7:34 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's follow this string through time. You're in a medieval European tavern now around the 13th century where the air's thick with ale, sweat and laughter. You're a minstrel cradling a vielle, a boxy bowed instrument that's the violin's scrappy ancestor. You tuck it under your chin or against your chest, drawing the bow to spin a melody that gets boots stomping and skirts twirling. The sounds roar, a bit nasal, like a friend telling a story with too much wine in them. It's not refined, but it's alive, weaving through smoky halls, church choirs and noble courts. Your vielle's got no standard shape, some are long, some squat, all quirky, but it's yours, carved by hands that knew wood better than words. By the Renaissance, you're in a bustling Italian city 15th century, where art's exploding like spring after a long winter. You're playing a lira da braccio broader and flatter, perfect for strumming chords to back a poet's verses. The crowd's humanists and dreamers, craving music that speaks to the soul. But your instrument's got limits, it's clunky, the sound's muddy, and it can't keep up with the new hunger for clarity and range. You hear musicians grumbling, wanting something nimbler, something that can sing like a voice but soar like a flute. Artisans are tinkering too, curving wood thinner, varnishing it to glow. You sense a shift, a quiet revolution in the workshops, where the violin soul is stirring, ready to leap from crude fiddles to something eternal. If this evolving tune's gripping you, hit that like button, and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene at 7:34 p.m. on June 21st, 2025? Let's see where this music leads. You're in Cremona, Italy, mid-16th century, a sleepy town along the Po River, where the air smells of sawdust and varnish. You're an apprentice in Andrea Amati's workshop, surrounded by curls of spruce and maple, your hands learning the chisel's dance. This isn't just woodworking, it's alchemy. Amati's not building fiddles like the old days, he's crafting violins sleek and singing that feel like they've got souls. You watch him streamline the lira da braccio's clunky body, carving arched tops and backs that hum when you tap them. He cuts F-shaped sound holes precise as a poet's quill, letting the sound breathe freer than ever. Your fingers trace the curves, marvelling at how light it is, how it fits your shoulder like it was born there. Amati's tuning them in perfect fifths, a system that makes the strings sing like a human voice, agile and warm. You play one and it's a revelation, clear, responsive, a far cry from the muddy vielle you knew. These violins aren't for taverns, they're for kings. You hear King Charles II of France ordered 24, hand-painted and gilded to dazzle his court. Cremona's buzzing, its guild culture, a crucible of secrets whispered from master to apprentice. The maples from nearby hills, the spruce slow-grown, the climate perfect for drying wood. You're part of a revolution where violins aren't just tools, but art signed by makers like Amati, whose heirs Guarneri Stradivari will push this craft to the stars. If this workshop magic's got you hooked, drop a like, and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 7:35 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's keep carving this tale. You're in Venice, 1607, a violinist in a candlelit theatre, your bow trembling with the weight of Claudio Monteverdi's Orfeo. You're not just plucking tavern tunes anymore. Your violin's a voice in the world's first great opera, weaving mood and magic. Its sound soars seductive one moment, sorrowful the next, proving it's no rustic fiddle but a star. You're part of Italy's musical heart, where violins lead chamber groups and chapel choirs, their clarity cutting through stone cathedrals. By the 17th century, you're travelling carrying Cremona's craft to Paris, where Louis XIV's court flaunts a 24-violin band, the 24 Violons, their music as grand as the Sun King's ego. You play with pride your instrument, a badge of prestige. Fast forward to the 18th century and you're in Vienna, a bow in hand, tackling Vivaldi's Four Seasons. Your violin mimics bird storms and rustic dances, telling stories that grip audiences like a bard's tale. Mozart and Beethoven come next, their sonatas and concertos demanding your fingers dance and your heart bleed. You're no mere player now, you're a storyteller, coaxing nuance and fire from four strings. In Germany, makers like Jakob Steiner craft violins with warmer tones, while players like Heinrich Biber push virtuosity with wild ornamentation. Churches embrace your sound, once deemed too sensual, now soaring in sacred oratorios. Your violins everywhere, taverns, palaces, cathedrals, a chameleon of sound, ready for the golden age to come. If this musical journey striking a chord, hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene? At 07:35 p.m. on June 21, 2025. Let's play on. You're in Cremona 1700, a young luthier sweeping sawdust from Antonio Stradivari's workshop floor. The air's thick with the scent of spruce and varnish, and every chisel stroke feels like a prayer. Stradivari, trained in Amati's shadow, isn't just building violins, he's crafting miracles. You watch him select alpine spruce and flamed maple aged to perfection, his hands shaping wood with a precision that borders on sorcery. His violins aren't mere instruments. They're alive with curves that catch the light and a varnish that glows like amber, its recipe still a mystery. You pluck a string, and the sound is clear, warm, powerful enough to fill a hall, or whisper to a single soul. Stradivari's creations, over 1,000 in his lifetime, from violins to cellos, are named like royalty, the Messiah, the Lady Blunt. You hear kings and virtuosos clamour for them, each one a masterpiece signed and singular, his secret. Maybe it's the wood's slow growth, maybe his obsessive tweaks to thickness and arching, or maybe it's just genius. You play one and it feels like an extension of your heart, responsive to every flick of the bow. Across Europe, his fame spreads. Even after his death in 1737, a Stradivarius is a prize, a relic of sound's divine era. Guarneri's violins, darker and bolder, compete, but Stradivari's name is legend, his workshop a shrine where music's future was carved. If this craft's magic's got you hooked, drop a like and let me know where you're tuning in from. What's the vibe at 07:37 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's bow into the next chapter. You're no longer in Cremona's workshops, but in a 19th century Romani camp, where the violin's voice dances under a starlit sky. You're a musician, your fingers flying over strings, coaxing cries, and flourishes that make the crowd sway and weep. The violin's not just for courts anymore. In Romani hands, it's a rebel singing of resistance and joy passed down through oral tradition, not stuffy conservatories. You leap to America now, a fiddler in an Appalachian barn 1800s, your bow kicking up reels and jigs. The violin's shed its silk for worn boots, its quick rhythmic strokes leading dances in dusty halls, a communal heartbeat for farmers and dreamers. By the 20th century, you're in India seated cross-legged, your violin angled toward your ankle, weaving Carnatic ragas with microtones and slides that feel like a new language. In Mexico, you're strumming mariachi melodies, your violin soaring over trumpets. In Argentina, it's tango sultry and sharp paired with a bandoneon sigh. Then you're in a 1930s Paris jazz club channeling Stefan Grappelli, your violin swinging with playful grit. By the 21st century, you see players like Jean-Luc Ponty bending jazz fusion, or Regina Carter blending folk and groove. Your violin's a global citizen now, speaking classical jazz folk raw, or refined always itself. It adapts, listens, blends a chameleon of sound that's still unmistakably violin. If this worldwide song's gripping, you hit that like button and tell me where you're listening from. What's the scene at 07:37 p.m. on June 21, 2025? Let's play the final note. You're in 2025, standing in a packed concert hall, the air alive with the violin's timeless cry. You're not a luthier or a Baroque star, now you're a listener watching a prodigy like Hilary Hahn pour fresh fire into a Vivaldi concerto, her notes as sharp as ever. The violin's still king in orchestras, its voice weaving through symphonies and solos, but it's also breaking free, dancing in places old masters couldn't dream of. You see players like Patricia Kopachinskaya, her bow scratching and shrieking in avant-garde works, or Curtis Stewart blending hip-hop with Bach. The violin's a lab now, not just singing, but tapping, looping, mimicking storms or machines with electronics and wild tunings. You flip to a YouTube live stream where a kid in Nairobi learns a Mozart sonata from a Juilliard master, free with a tap. Electric violins hum in pop and rock, think Lindsay Sterling twirling through EDM beats for millions online, her performance as visual as it is sonic. Competitions like the Menuhin keep the classical flame burning, but the violin's no museum piece. It's in subway stations, jazz dives, and viral TikToks, accessible yet deep. You marvel at its staying power in a world of AI and instant everything the violin endures because it's human. It weeps like you do, sings like you wish you could, whether on a creaky stage or a digital screen. It's ancient, defiant, evolving a storyteller whose tale never ends. If this vibrant legacy's got you hooked, drop a like and tell me where you're listening from. What's the vibe at 0942 PM on June 20, 2025. This wraps the violin story. Say next for... Well, we're done, so further presses won't spark new tales.